Previously on cartridge-based radio.
Just ignore what Umbrella's doing. It's cool over there. There's a mansion up in the hills. Just don't go there. I think one did a really great job with the mansion. Was one of the scariest parts about that game. Just because it was closed in and oppressive.
Yeah. Remember when the series didn't suck? We're going to try to go back to that.
Welcome back to Cartridge Based Radio. I'm Donald, once again joined by Brad.
Hello!
Brad, we live in a day and age where we have to think about securing our lives and our possessions from intruders to our lives and homes.
And workplaces. I've worked at a few offices now that have had some pretty intricate security setups.
But what if you were running a highly illegal and unethical medical experiment? What do you do to guard yourself against the prying eyes of, say, the government or a rogue police entity?
Well, I haven't worked at one of those before, but I did work at a security company, and they had little electric key cards that, like RFID, where you just would put it up against the reader, and you could program it for every room in the building so that, it was specific to your card. You'd have access to specific rooms. So that would probably be the way to go. It's newish technology, but it's not like so cutting edge that they probably haven't had it for, I would guess probably since the mid-90s, maybe even earlier.
So it would have had it in 1998.
I would think so. Maybe a more primitive version, but I would say something similar.
So let's say a company is creating a virus that causes people to become zombies in a mansion.
Okay.
They would need a security system.
They sure would. That's not the kind of thing that you would want just somebody wandering in and finding out all about.
No. So you and I played through Resident Evil 1, the PlayStation original version, these last couple weeks. And we are going to go through some of the highlights of their security system and figure out just how secure Umbrella's mansion is.
Yes, so for those of you who are familiar with the game, this is a pretty popular game, so probably most of you, if you haven't played it, you at least know what the deal is. I will say right off the bat, this game has a silly security system. Like, nobody's going to argue that this necessarily is the most efficient or cost-effective or non-cumbersome security system. So we're accepting that premise, but we still want to see if it was, functional in the sense that, what you'd want from any security system. It keeps the people you don't want out, but is still accessible to the people that you do want in.
All right, so we're going to start here at the top of my notes. I have 3 pages of notes. Brad, you're sitting on, 4 or 5?
I have a whole notebook just full of notes on Resident Evil.
So I'd say the first most important thing to this mansion is making sure your intruder doesn't understand the floor plan. Now, I need you to rate the security of how they kept this information out of the STARS agent's hand. They placed the map curled up in the water basin of a statue and put a set of stairs directly next to the statue.
Now, the funny thing is in the game, the camera angle is very conspicuously looking down at the statue. So it's like a top-down-ish camera angle. So it's very obvious that the map's in there. Without seeing that, from the ground level, it's probably a lot harder to see. And, there's stairs right there. But if you saw a little step stool next to a statue, your first thought is probably not, oh, hey, I'm going to climb up that step stool and see if there's anything on top of the statue. That's not how normal people think. So I would say on that front, the map is fairly secure.
That's true, but why wouldn't you, put it in a wall safe behind a combo?
I mean, that's one way to do things. Why don't they have, electric key cards? Or in some cases, just keys as opposed to puzzles. But the Umbrella Mansion is a little bit whimsical, I guess you could say, in its design. Somebody really had fun when they were making this.
Oh, important question was to answer. Did Umbrella install the security system Or did they buy this mansion from like an eccentric billionaire?
I think that second explanation, that makes a lot of the rest of this make sense. Like if the mansion was just this way, and they came out with the real estate agent, they're like, well, we need something really secure to put our like secret bioterrorism lab underneath it. And this place has all kinds of like weird layout and different keys, and you need to collect badges to open up the backyard. This will be great.
Yeah. So early on, you need to start collecting these badges.
Yeah.
And the first one is hidden behind a tiger statue. And you have to put a blue gem in its eye to get it to rotate to get you the wind crest.
Yeah.
Now, you have to hide the gem. And in Resident Evil, the gem is hidden in a statue that you have to push off the second floor down into the dining room. And I think this is one of the most secure items in the entire house because nobody's going to think to just shove a statue off a balcony onto an expensive dining room table.
On top of everything else, that's dangerous just if there was somebody down there that, could get hit by the statue itself or pieces that fly off it when it hits the ground. It's worth noting that these badges, I would assume that they're one of a kind. Keys, I could see where you maybe made multiple copies of the keys and gave them to the employees that need them. But the badges are kind of unique. So anybody who needs to get into that back area that these badges unlock, they got to go knock over a statue. They have to go up into the attic and get one off of the floor. They have to solve a puzzle with some suits of armor. And there's a fourth one that I don't remember. But you got to do a lot of running around just to get to the back courtyard. We talked about accessibility, and I would give this part of the security system a big thumbs down for accessibility because this is very cumbersome to have to do this to access the courtyard.
And you say you got to get one from upstairs on the floor like it's no big deal, like there isn't a giant poisonous python protecting it.
Well, is that part of the security system or was that just kind of an after the fact, the snake that we've been experimenting on escaped? Because if we're going to judge the security system on its merits, we need to determine whether the snake is an intentional part of that security system.
It might not be, and just somebody carrying the second crest was up there and the snake ate him, and that's why the crest is just laying on the floor. Because most of these other things are very secure, but you got this snake that's protecting the moon crest?
Sure. I didn't write down which crest was which. That's the crest, but backing up a bit, just talking about getting around the mansion, and different areas of the mansion are locked by specific keys, which is, a pretty common way to secure things within one building. You might have multiple sets of keys. On this part of the security system, I'd say it works pretty well because keys you can make copies of. I'm assuming that the ones that you find in the game are kind of like the spare keys that they leave laying around, and they're obtainable, but even with them, you're getting around the mansion, but you're not seeing anything too crazy. Here's some rooms, here's a library. There's no experiments or laboratories that are accessible. If you come into the mansion, you get the sword and the armor key and the shield key.
I would say that leaving the keys around, the spare keys, is a blinding flaw in the security system, but that might be wrapped up to people fleeing when people start becoming zombies. That's how those got left around.
Only one of them's really laying around. The sword key is just laying on a bed in a storage room. The armor key is hidden behind a sentient plant. It's not super aggressive. It's just if you get near it, it kind of slaps you away. So it's kind of an annoying plant, but it's not really dangerous. There's a dangerous plant later in the game. And the only way to get to that key then is to kill the plant. So kind of between the statue that you have to knock over and this plant that you have to kill, it seems like a lot of the security system is just based around, they're assuming you're not going to be a jerk and start breaking their stuff.
But here's a question. Was that plant there when the eccentric millionaire built this mansion? Because otherwise that second key is just kind of laying out in the open too.
Yeah, it's just kind of hanging out in the greenhouse. It could be that once Umbrella made a sentient plant, they're like, oh, hey, we could have it guard the key. Because, no jerk's just going to come in here with some poison and dump it into the fountain and kill it.
Now, eccentric millionaires love secret doors.
Yes.
So, let's say you're not musically inclined and you go into this mansion.
Yeah.
One of the doors is only open by playing the Moonlight Sonata on a grand piano. What do you do if you don't know how to play the piano and you gotta get in that door?
This is probably the crux of the early security system, is the whole thing is contingent on whether or not someone can play the piano. It's not a difficult puzzle to figure out. Like, there's sheet music. It's the only music in the room. There's a piano right there. You figure out, like, it wants us to play this song. But if you don't know how to play music, then the security system's flawless. Like, it'll keep everybody out that you need to keep out. Jill knows how to read music. But if you're playing through as Chris, the only reason that he can progress in the game is because he makes the insane decision that in the middle of a zombie outbreak, he tells his friend Rebecca, oh, hey, keep practicing this music. Like, there's zombies everywhere, but you work on the Moonlight Sonata. I'm going to go, like, kill a snake or whatever.
Yeah, a lot of situations in this game are resolved by someone who you are not pulling you out of the fire.
Yeah.
Which brings me to the most insane part of the security trap, which I believe is 100% fatal. It's the shotgun in the picture frame.
Yeah.
So you pick a shotgun up from a picture frame, and when you leave the room, it locks the door behind you and the door in front of you, and then the ceiling starts dropping, like Indiana Jones style. And in the game, Barry kicks open the door and Jill is saved. But if no one was there, just walking by, she would have died in that room.
Yeah, or if you're playing as Chris and you don't have Barry to save you. Yeah, you get access to the shotgun room before you get access to the object that saves you from that trap. So it is real easy to just go in there and be like, oh, hey, a free gun, take it and die. Now, having said that, I have a couple issues with this. One is Umbrella's not very good about firearm safety. They're just leaving loaded guns laying around this house. I'm not a huge gun guy, but, if you own firearms or, are a collector or whatever, like, things that you're told, for good safekeeping of guns is keep them locked up, don't leave them loaded, put the ammo someplace away from the gun. And Umbrella's just like, hey, loaded shotgun mounted on the wall. Nobody take it or I'll set off a trap that'll kill you. And the other thing about this trap is you take the gun off of the brackets and the gun's actually weighing down the brackets. So you see like the little hooks slide up and that triggers the whole trap. And what you're supposed to do in the game is like put a broken shotgun on there and that'll weigh it down and undo the trap and then you can walk off. But it's not like weight sensitive the way like Raiders of the Lost Ark where he puts the bag of sand down and it has to be the exact same weight as the idol and it ends up being too heavy. Whatever you're putting on there can be too heavy. You could just like take a string and tie it around like a big sack of doorknobs and hang that off of the hooks and it'll pull it down. Free shotgun. So sack of doorknobs isn't an item that you find in the game, but if you had it handy, that gets you a shotgun.
You could have just picked up one of those chairs and hung it off one of those hooks and been fine.
Yeah, I think there were like some heavy looking books. Chris and Jill's lack of imagination is kind of the only thing that's really like keeping that shotgun out of people's hands.
So I'd say this is a very good trap for dealing with intruders in your eccentric mansion. The only downside to this trap is not just like, haha, I hit a door that you couldn't open until you did X, Y, and Z. This trap is murder.
Yeah, and this is going to be a problem if like this mansion is supposed to be like staffed by Umbrella staff who need to work there. And, they're being crushed in a trap room because, their level of security with the office like gave them one key but not the other, so they don't have the broken shotgun. Also, like, a workplace is a terrible place to be leaving a loaded firearm. I keep coming back to this. It's just really unsafe to just leave a shotgun at the office.
Well, if you rotate the tiger statue the other way, you get like a Colt 45.
Yeah, which is also loaded.
Yeah, I mean, that is by far more secure than the shotgun.
Yeah.
Because you have to do some work to get that red gem to turn the statue the other way. But yeah, it's a loaded Colt 45, which is the Dirty Harry gun, if you are wondering. It's a mini hand cannon. Speaking of Raiders of the Lost Ark,
Yes.
there's a boulder in this game that you must avoid, and just Indiana Jones style, it comes rolling at you, and the only thing you really have to fight in that scene is tank controls, but it bashes open a wall.
Yeah. Which leads to more tunnels.
But the only way to get to that door is if that wall gets broken.
Yeah.
Like, it's an important room, too, that you need to go to, and they're like, the only way to access this is to break this wall. So do you have to repair the wall every time you want to go to this room?
And put the boulder back, I would assume. This is really key because those tunnels that are only connected by breaking the walls with boulders, that's what leads to the entrance to the laboratory, which is hidden under a giant fountain. So, as far as keeping intruders out, it's a really, really, really good system. First of all, they're going to have to go all the way up into the library of the mansion to retrieve the battery to the elevator. Then they're going to have to put that in the elevator, go through all these tunnels, break a bunch of walls with boulders, then drain a fountain and go down in there. So keeping people out of your secret laboratory, really good at that. But your workforce that needs to get to the library to do their, evil experiments, every morning they're going to get into work and retrieve 4 badges, use that to get some medallions, go up to the library and get the battery for the elevator, which they must take out every night and put back in the library. Go through these tunnels, dodge boulders, use a hand crank to turn the wall in the tunnel at one part, which probably requires a lot of upper body strength. They have to do all that just to get to work in the morning.
Also, the mechanics behind rotating an entire section of a hallway, A, would not be cost effective, and B, if anything in that broke and you're stuck between where the door is facing downwards where there's no hallway, everyone can't get to work and you gotta call the repair people who are like, this system is stupid. And what kind of piston shaft do you need for the crushing ceiling to operate?
A strong one, I would imagine.
But it's gonna have to be a large tower coming out of the middle of the mansion. So when they're running up to it, they're like, oh, there's gonna be a crushing ceiling, guys. Don't just watch the ceilings.
Speaking of cost effective, you have 2 items that are accessible by giant freaking gems. That blue gem that we're talking about that's being held by a statue, that you gotta break the statue every time you need to access the gem. I mean, that's like a sapphire that is the size of your fist. I think that would actually break the record for the largest carved sapphire in the world, and it's probably worth about $1 million. So it's like, okay, employee, if you need to get the badge to go into the courtyard, just take the $1 million gem and run down this hallway and stick it into the statue's eye. And if you need the loaded magnum, get the fist-sized ruby from the other room.
What you gotta do is go back and get those rubies before you escape at the end. Now, dogs can be trained to protect certain things in your home.
Yeah.
You buy a Rottweiler and be like, guard my fist-sized gem, and he will, if that's his job.
Yep.
Now, this mansion has attack crows. Who trained these crows to attack if you push the wrong button below a painting?
Yeah. The only thing I could think of is that, the buttons that you're pressing, if they're not pressed in a certain sequence, maybe it sends them a little electric pulse through that thing that the crows are perched on, and that angers them, and then they attack you.
But they're not going to go back to that perch. They're going to learn that the perch is what shocks them.
Yeah, that's also true. Does somebody have to go into that hallway every morning and, spread some birdseed out on the floor or something?
Let's sweep up the poop.
And then the other thing is, you have to press you have to look at the paintings and, put them in order and then press all the buttons under them in sequence. And for doing that, what happens is that a different painting falls off the wall, revealing the badge behind it. And it's if you know it's there, you could just take the painting off. It's a painting. Just take it off the wall.
Maybe it's got those rare earth magnets that are impossible to separate. I guess you still could punch your way through the canvas.
Yeah, it's a painting.
And this is not the first time these crows attack you. It's the second time the attack crows attack you.
Yeah.
Because if you go outside and you find the bazooka, which a dead guy is just holding, a loaded bazooka, they attack you.
If you're playing as Jill. If you're playing as Chris, you get 15 bullets, which is enough to kill 1.5 zombie.
So maybe Jill came by first, was like, oh, sweet, a bazooka. And then Chris came by, he's like, oh, sweet, 15 bullets. I hope Jill got something cool from our friend Corpse here.
Our friend Forrest.
Do the birds attack you when you get the 15 rounds?
Kind of half-heartedly. You can get away from them without really taking any damage.
They were really guarding that bazooka. They're like, that's our bazooka. But that probably was not installed. The attack birds in the hallway attacking you for bad painting, button pushing, those had to be trained and installed when the eccentric millionaire owned this thing.
Could you imagine, like, the realtor trying to sell you on this house? And he's just like, okay, so if you have anything that you really want to keep protected, you can put it behind this painting, and then anybody who tries to take it's going to have to push all these buttons in a certain order that's going to be really obvious based on the one clue that we left here in the subjects of the paintings. But if they screw that up, they'll be pecked to death by these crows. By the way, you're responsible for keeping these crows alive.
And he's like, perfect, I love this. So later on, there's two metal symbols, a wolf and an eagle.
Yes.
You use a crank to move a statue from the wall to get a book, and the book is called Doom Book Volume 2 and Doom Book Volume 1, and their entire purpose is to have a metal crest inside. Did the eccentric millionaire really find it necessary to put these medallions inside a book and then hide the book?
Back before the internet really took off and you could just get a fan fiction of anything you wanted online for free, there used to be like books based on, like, very bad fiction novels based on popular game franchises. And I like to think that these were just like two novels based on the game Doom that were like published in 1994. And like somebody's like, this book sucks. I'm just going to carve out the middle of it and hide my medallions in here.
That would be a good use for those books. It's hiding. Okay, so he did something good. The millionaire did something good.
That's the explanation of the Doom books.
Now, there's a part where there's a classic painting, and when you turn on a black light in the room, you see words written on it.
Yeah.
So was there like a trap designer who was also a pothead?
Entirely possible. That's actually in the secret laboratory. Security gets a little less whimsical in the secret lab, but it's not perfect. They have electronic locks, which is good. It's password protected, but if you know the password, it unlocks all the doors on one level. You know, it's not the best system. Like, you would think it would be like, okay, unlock this room, keep the other ones locked. You know, that would be a lot more secure. It's just like, oh, I'm going to unlock all the doors.
Now, let's talk about a security measure that Umbrella themselves installed. A zombie shark? At what point did they think, you know what we need our zombie-making serum to be injected into? A tiger shark. What scenario did they think they were going to need a tiger shark that was a zombie?
Yeah, it's hard to gather what they were thinking that day. I'm just like, man, like, they had to get a shark at some point. They like call up the ocean and they're like, hey, could you drop off a shark? And, you know, whoever is in charge of that's like, why? We want to put some zombie virus in it and see what happens.
And let's remember, this mansion is in the forests in Montana. So they had to somehow get a tiger shark from the ocean to Montana in the forest.
You know, I mean, what were they hoping to achieve? Like, all right, we're going to put this T-virus into the shark, and then it'll be really mean and aggressive. It's like, it's a tiger shark. You don't have to do that. It's a shark. It's mean.
Let's get the most mean shark and turn it into a zombie. We made a mean zombie shark. Congratulations, guys. Yeah, so the traps and stops in the mansion are much, much, much better than the ones Umbrella thought up. Umbrella thought up, like, in the dormitory, there's a ladder that leads down that you need to get to, so they just put two bookcases in front of it that you can use your shoulder to push aside.
They're not, like, it's very obvious that, like, there's something behind the bookcase, because it's, like, a foot away from the wall.
Oh, one that I thought was stupid. There's a button in a box of, like, preserved bugs, and you push it, and it moves a fish tank.
Yeah, it drains the fish tank, which is amazing. Where'd the water go?
Why would he be like, I need a fast drain to my fish tank.
The fish are looking at me like, what's that button do?
Like, do you just stand there, like, brushing your finger against the button, looking at the fish, like, you guys gonna be good today? And the fish are just terrified every day.
The fish are like, what do we do to be bad or good? We're fish.
So you drain the fish tank, and then you can move it aside, and then you can move a bookcase aside, and for all this hard work, you get 6 bazooka rounds in Jill's side of it. So he made this whole thing just to hide his bazooka rounds.
Why does he have... I mean, you find the bazooka on a member of Star, so it's not like... I guess this guy was just a collector. He didn't have a bazooka, but he's just like, man, I got these rounds. I was at the flea market, and I saw these bazooka rounds, and they were pretty cheap, so I got them, but now I got to find a place to stash them.
These military-grade bazooka rounds at the flea market, the guy didn't know what he had.
Yeah.
You get a cigarette lighter, like a Zippo, and you get to use it 2 times. The first time you light a fireplace, and the heat from it reveals a map of the 2nd floor, which that's a pretty good hide. People might not think to light that fireplace, but it's the only source of heat in the room, so you think you would light it if that was your bedroom, and then be like, oh, sweet, this blank piece of paper is actually a map. So, the map thing, that's weird. But the second time you get to use it, you light a candlestick, and a bookshelf moves.
It's heat sensitive.
How do you rig that? Is there a wire up the middle of the candle, and when it gets warm, it flips a trigger to move a bookshelf?
Well, I mean, I'm interested in, like, the mechanical process that... You know, like, what's powering that bookshelf to move? How are you actually pushing a big, heavy... I mean, it's full of books. That's heavy.
Yeah, so you'd have to calculate it for, like, a max load move. So if that bookshelf's empty and you accidentally light that candle, that bookshelf's gonna move at such a speed it's gonna go flying across the room. But I mean, it's a good one because most people aren't going to think, hey, I should just light this one random candle in this room to move this bookshelf. So I'd give that one good marks.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty good way to hide a tiny little room. One part of the mansion that I would give really bad marks to is there's a room in the guardhouse that is full of dangerous chemicals that you have to, like, mix all together. And, you know, this is like acids and who knows what else, dangerous stuff. There's a security pad to keep people out of this room, but it's like just a fun little number game where every time you press a number, it lights up different buttons on a grid, and if you figure out the right combination of numbers, it opens the door for you, and you have infinite tries, you know, so you can just tap away. And, you know, I think part of a good security system is it shouldn't be like fun just to play with. You know, until you, like, figure out how to open the room. You know, it should be annoying, maybe, or not let you just keep putting the wrong codes in 100 million times.
I mean, if you think about the eccentric millionaire's grandchildren might be over and just think it's a fun puzzle game to get all the lights lit up, and then they're in a room with these highly toxic chemicals.
Yeah, it's like, okay, kids, play the number game until you can go into the room of poison. Ironically, right around the corner from that is actually one of the better security features in the mansion. It's a key that's being guarded by a nest of giant hornets.
It's a gas trap. So to get one of the crests, get into the backyard, you go into a room with a bunch of suits of armors along the wall. And there's a button in the middle of the room. And if you push the button, it fills with gas and you die. You have to move some statues over the vents before you push the button. What if you're just in there admiring your suits of armor and your foot hits that? That's a bad trap, even just for, like, day-to-day live. To put the button that releases the gas on the floor?
That's not the best idea. You know, if you're Jill, like, yeah, that you could die. If you're Chris, you cough a little bit and have to walk out of the room, and then you're fine. Because Chris is just a tank.
He's like, poisonous gas don't affect my lungs. I vape.
Yeah, that's not a great plan. Thinking back to that piano area, Chris is kind of a jerk. It's like, he comes in, he can't read music at all. So he's like, well, I guess I'm not going to get to play the Moonlight Sonata. What a disappointment. And then Rebecca comes in. She's like, I know how to play the piano. Then she sits down. She hits a bunch of wrong notes. And Chris is just like, huh, what is that? I mean, he's kind of a jerk about it for somebody who can't, like, play at all. And, like, she missed, like, 2 notes.
Okay, so a lot of bad dialogue in this game. At the end, when you're Jill, Chris is in a prison cell, and when you get him out, he's like, oh man, this is a situation, isn't it? And Jill's like, oh, you're right, Chris. It's like, we just saw the most horrific stuff of our lives, and you're just like, eh. But everyone points out the Master of Unlocking line as the worst line in the game, but I have a new contender.
I also have a contender. Let's see if we're thinking of the same one. You go.
It's probably not, because you played Chris, I played Jill.
Yes, but the one that I have in mind does come from the Jill play.
Oh, so mine is you meet up with Barry upstairs, and he gives you some bazooka rounds, and he says, it's a weapon. It's especially powerful against living things.
Okay, that's not the one I was thinking of, but that's pretty terrible.
Yeah, you don't fight any mechanical things in this entire game, so why does he specifically have to point out it's powerful against living things? Also, it's a bazooka round. It's powerful against everything, Barry.
Thanks. Barry is like, 15, 20 years before this was a thing. Like, Barry is just mansplaining everything to Jill.
Yeah, I mean, it's bad. And Jill's like so happy he's doing it too. I'm like, Jill, you're an awesome special police agent. Have some respect.
Yeah, you're like on the elite force of the police here. You don't need Barry to explain to you that bazookas are good against living things. That is pretty terrible. The one I was thinking of is when you play as Jill, the second time you fight the snake, and it knocks a giant hole in the floor after you kill it. And then, like, Barry shows up, and they have this conversation where they're like, well, there's a hole in the floor. Oh, that's okay. I have this rope. All right, I'll use the rope to climb down there. Yes, take this rope. Like, they use the word rope like 20 times in like a 2-minute conversation.
But then Barry drops the rope and he's like, oh, I have dropped the rope. And she's like, what happened to the rope?
We should find that clip on YouTube or something and like just put like a little like rope counter up in the corner. And count the number of times they say rope, because I'm thinking it's got to be at least 10.
And at the bottom of that hole, there's a gravestone. Like, the only way to get down to this place is if the snake breaks the floor in that specific place in that room. And there's a button on the gravestone.
Yeah, it's a fake grave.
And it moves. I'm like, who would put a gravestone underneath a room that has a fake gravestone? What is going on? Oh, and also Barry does not acknowledge the melting snake in that room. When he runs in, he's like, oh, Jill, I found you. If I ran into a room and there was an anaconda slowly disintegrating into the floor, I'd be like, this is something we probably should talk about for like 30 seconds at most.
For some reason, Barry finds it to be super awkward, and he's just like, well, maybe I just won't mention it. If Jill doesn't mention it, then we don't have to talk about it.
He has a thing with snakes. So, let's talk about the Watergate for a minute. Not the hotel. We're not going to talk about the hotel. You have to do a series of puzzles with elevators and the battery, and then you shut a gate. And you go back down into the garden, and there's been a ladder obscured by this waterfall this whole time until you get this puzzle completed. You go down the ladder to this obscured behind the waterfall ladder. This is the first time it's been accessible this whole time, and Barry is standing at the bottom of the ladder, and he's like, hi, Jill, what took you so long? And she's like, I was just a little lost, I guess. She just unlocked that ladder, so he would have been like, oh, I can get down this ladder now. And then he says something snarky about her taking too long.
And she just goes along with it. So, have some self-respect, Jill.
And Jill is obviously the best character in the game. Chris is a meathead. As we wrap up here, we need to rate this security system.
Yeah.
And then we're going to talk about the one moment in the game that I need to talk to as we head out, because it's the most careless use of a weapon in this game of careless use and protection of weapons. There is one ultimate moment. So, Brad, what would you give the mansion the eccentric billionaire built that Umbrella later bought and or took over?
I would say that as far as access around the mansion, I think the system with the different keys works pretty well. But in terms of like access for the employees to be able to do their jobs, I think it's a disaster. They all would have to know how to play the piano. Like that is critical. They all have to like fetch emblems and elevator batteries and lug all that around and drain a fountain. Like it's really good at, kind of leaving access to the mansion, out of people's hands, but it's a little too effective at like keeping people out. And I think it would be a real problem for anybody who worked there to actually like get around or get into the laboratory.
So you're giving it like a D?
Yeah, D sounds about right.
I agree.
Effective, but cumbersome.
That's going to do it for our talk on the mansion security. And as we're leaving you, the final boss fight in this game with the Tyrant, the helicopter that's going to rescue is circling around the top while you fight the Tyrant. And at one point, they drop a 4-missile rocket launcher out of the helicopter into the middle of the battle arena. They drop a rocket launcher and they're like, Jill, grab that. And if you drop a rocket launcher, there's a good chance it's just going to fire. And it fires 4 missiles at a time. Why would you drop a rocket launcher out of a helicopter? Why not just shoot the thing from the helicopter?
I mean, if you want to be fancy, I guess you could do it that way. I'm kind of thinking the helicopter pilot just, kind of wanted to see who would get it first. Like the Tyrant has a big claw hand, but he's got like one normal hand. So he could pick up the rocket launcher and kind of like manipulate it with his good hand. Just use like the giant Freddy Krueger claw hand to kind of brace the front of it. So it's kind of like, I wonder who's going to get it first, the Tyrant or Jill. Race for it, you two. I'll throw it right in the middle of the two of you and we'll see who wants it more.
So he just wanted to watch a gladiator battle. He didn't care which side won.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to do it. I believe the reason that the Nemesis in the third Resident Evil hates you so much is because the Tyrant is his son and you murdered him. That is the conclusion I've come to.
And worse yet, he's carrying around that rocket launcher that you killed the Tyrant with.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
I think we're onto something here. If you enjoyed this episode, we ask you to please share it with a friend. Word of mouth is a great way for us to grow. If you wouldn't mind rating us somewhere, there's many places, iTunes, Stitcher, Facebook. You can actually join our Facebook group. Some new things are going to be popping up there very soon. You'll visit us on Twitter. How to get access to all that's over there on the show notes. Brad, any final thoughts on home security?
No, not on home security. I would just say, I know we've been pushing for people to subscribe to the show, and it's worked in the sense that most of the people who are listening to the show now already are subscribers. But if you're, just stumbled onto us through YouTube or somebody shared a video with you or whatever, and you haven't subscribed yet, please go ahead and do so. It helps us out a ton, and it's really appreciated.
Yeah, that is true. So I'm Donald, that was Brad, and we will see you for the main show in 2 weeks.
Oh, I got a text from my friend Paul who explained why the George Washington episode title didn't work. And he said that the phrase sexy George Washington is redundant. And I can't really argue with